Well, 2022 is already turning out to be a pretty big year for you. Induction into the Hall of Fame. Tell us a little bit about what that is as a culmination of a lifetime in racing.
Well, I guess, you spend your career thinking about championships. Winning races obviously is kind of, you want to win a race, one race. When I was about 18 or 19 years old, my dad is very established champion in the sport. Dale Earnhardt won a lot of races, won a lot of championships. Some people were saying one of the best to ever do it. And the way I looked at it was I wanted to race for a living, meaning I wanted just to be able to pay my phone bill and my utilities. And if I could do that and figure out a way to do this for the rest of my life, that was my goal. I had no set number of races I wanted to win. I had no championship out there in the horizon that I was aiming for. I basically just wanted to be able to make a living doing it. And in my mind, the way that would be achieved is if I won a race, one race, just once, I would look out into the field of cars and look at the drivers that were driving those cars, and I see this guy, and I'm like, oh, he won a race, and he's still doing it. And this guy over here won a couple races, and he's kind of still milking it off of those 2 wins. And if I could just win that one race, I think I could probably, get a good career out of this whole thing. And so when I finally won my first race, it was back in 1998 in Texas. That was my rationale. That was my thought in the moment. I got out of the car and I went, I might be able to make a living out of this. And I finally, I got this one race, and boy, this should this should carry me a few years and carry me down the road. And obviously, we won more and more races in a really short period of time. I went from I went from an hourly wage changing oil at a dealership in the service department to making $5 million in a matter of 6 months. And that was, I was way in over my head in terms of understanding what to do with this money, how to invest it, what was ahead of me, what was coming at me, who to trust. Deals were flying at me left and right from popular, beverage companies and shoe companies and all kinds of things. And so it was a very quick, overnight, my world changed. But I think that you never ever throughout any of that think about Hall of Fame. You think about, I want to win one race, and you win that one race, and then you think about, okay, that felt good. I enjoyed that. I want to win another race. And now everybody's a little different, but that was sort of my approach. And I didn't take anything for granted. I didn't expect anything to happen for me. I didn't assume anything. I just took it one step at a time. And then one day, I thought, I wasn't quite achieving my dad. I go back to that, 7 championships, 70-something wins. I knew that I was never going to sort of, meet that mark or have those comparable stats. And so I started to think more about how to be an asset to the industry. If I can't go out there and win every race, and I can't go out there and win every championship and be the greatest driver of all time, if that's not my future and not my fate, like how can I be an asset to the industry so that the leaders of the industry are glad that I'm here and that they want me to be here tomorrow? And so that was really how I started to think midway through my career. And that's what brought me into broadcasting. That's what brought me into trying to create content and trying to celebrate the history of the sport. And so I think that is what got me into the Hall of Fame, that approach. Not the numbers, not the wins, I think it was more about, all of the other things that I brought to the table. We started a race team where we cultivated talent, drivers, crew chiefs. We had championship drivers at the cup level that have came through our program. And so we tried to get involved in everything and be an asset, true asset to the sport, so that all types of things, media, personnel, drivers, and individuals in the industry, all of that came through us in some way. And so it's a long journey, to be honest with you. But it started out really just trying to win that one race. And it's amazing how your goals change, your approach changes, and what you're aiming for changes. But I think in the end, that Hall of Fame induction for me was more about, that was kind of like a big pat on the back from the industry saying, man, we're glad you were here. This was a way for us to share with you that you mattered, that we were glad that you were a part of this all these years.
It's interesting. We just heard Neil talk about being an asset to humanity. And certainly you wanted to be an asset to racing.
Yeah.
And you certainly have done that. I don't want to diminish your driving though, because you've had some epic wins on the most famous tracks, including maybe one of the most emotional and compelling wins ever at Daytona. So what you meant as a driver and as an asset has been an inspiration to all of us.
Well, I appreciate that. Obviously when you're a race car driver, you think you're the best. Like if you're not thinking you're the best, you're never going to make it. We all have to have an ego to an extent. We all have to have this belief that we are absolutely better than any other driver in the field, even if maybe that's not exactly true. And so you sort of go about racing cars with a very a big sense of some arrogance and so forth. But there is a point, I think in every driver's career where they come to the realization and they understand where they really truly lie in terms of talent, ability, and I might have told you in my 20s and my 30s, if we were sitting on this stage today, I would tell you right now that I was the best driver in the field. But at certain points, you get into your 40s, and certainly today, I know that I wasn't the best guy out there. But I felt like that I was absolutely a great driver, a good driver, and a driver worthy of being out there, being in the field, And so I was really proud of that. When I was young, I looked, even with the last name Earnhardt, and all the doors that might open for me and all the opportunity that would create, just being related to one of the best drivers in stock car racing. I looked at that field every weekend as an 18, 16, 15-year-old, and there's 40, 43 guys or girls out there on the racetrack, and I'm thinking, of all the people in this country, the hundreds of millions of people, there's 43 that do this on Sunday. What are my chances? Even with all the connections I have, I just never felt like I was ever going to get it, opportunity. And even if I did get that opportunity, would I be able to secure it? And so, I feel very fortunate. Everything that ever happened to me in racing is far beyond, obviously, what I imagined or thought was possible.
Well, let me ask you this, because I want to bring in a little bit on aviation. And interestingly enough, the Air and Space Museum is reopening in downtown Washington, D.C. And they've got, of course, a business aviation section, which, among other things, features Bobby Unser.
Oh.
And then there is a special speed section that has race cars for Mario Andretti. And as I was talking about it, they said Mario Andretti had been there the night before and talked about his racing life and how important aviation was to get him to the track and to have his life. And I know every driver experiences that, including you. So could you talk a little bit about aviation being the backbone of NASCAR?
Absolutely. So my dad was an innovator and a pioneer in many ways in the sport. And one of those was through private aviation and ownership, which he turned eventually into a business which still operates today His Champion Air, which is his, something that he created, flies race teams and other sports entities around the country. And there's a big aviation industry in NASCAR itself that flies all of these race teams. Every team probably sends about 40 people to the racetrack, and there's 40 teams on the Cup level, another 40 teams on the Xfinity Series level, so hundreds of people going to the racetrack, plus all of the officials and NASCAR industry folk. And so, these teams used to travel up and down the road in 15-passenger vans. To get to a racetrack, you'd have to leave on Monday, and you'd get home the next Monday, and you weren't going to have a home life. You weren't going to see your family. If you were going to be in racing as a driver, mechanic, crew chief, or anything, you were going to have to be committed to being gone and on the road for months at a time. And there is no way we would be able to have anyone apply for that job if that was the case today. And so the ability to be able to have these people in and out of the racetrack on a quick, timely manner, be able to get them back home so they can be with their families and have some normalcy in their lives is so critical. And if we can't offer that, we're going to have a hard time finding quality individuals to work in our industry. For me personally, I'm here today. I'll be in New York tonight for I'm going on to some Good Morning America and a few other shows in the morning to promote a children's book me and my wife wrote. And then I've got to go to Homestead this weekend to be a broadcaster for NBC. And so being able to have that flexibility and ability to move around the country like that is essential for me and any other individual in the sport. So and it started at a very young age. My dad got a twin-engine plane and paid, worked hard, working every single week, going out and doing appearances and so forth to pay for that plane, and really developed that himself, that whole business himself. So something I think he'd be very proud of, and I'm pretty. It amazes me, that, like I said, it's owning a plane for me, and every time I climb in our plane to go anywhere, I certainly don't take it for granted, because I kind of know that whole process from where Dad started ownership and building his own business and aviation company, and we're still in those same hangars in Statesville, North Carolina, at the same airport all these years later. So it's something that's just always been a part of our business, and I couldn't imagine being able to function in our industry without it.
Well, let me ask you, because you're not you've immersed yourself in aviation. You obviously Hall of Fame racer. What similarities do you see between the approach to aviation and the approach to driving?
Well, we have our own mechanic. Paul is been with me for a really long time, and I love to talk to Paul because the preparation and meticulous effort that he puts into maintaining our plane reminds me a lot of a racing mechanic. And there are the details, the perfection, the quality, the craftsmanship, all of those things are absolutely comparable. And having a little bit of an understanding of a race car and the mechanics of a race car, I can quickly adapt some of that knowledge to what Paul does and have a little understanding of what he's trying to accomplish. And so that's, there's a lot of, knowing my own business in aviation, the preparation of the plane, the maintenance on the plane, that's very similar to our race cars. We race the cars, they have to be perfect, they have to perform perfectly, and then we take them home and we keep them pristine. We work on them and treat them as well as we can, and they need to be amazing in every way, visually and in performance as well. And that's the way that Paul and we approach our plane and ownership of our plane.
And just like a race car, the machine has to be perfect. You're a driver. You come to prepare, but there are pressures on you. Will you bring your best today? Are you driving your best? I'm sure there was a lot of pressure on you as a driver. Can you talk a little bit about how you deal with the pressure of being able to perform and your approach on days when you may not be at your best?
Yeah, that was always very tough for me. I still race cars. I run about 1 or 2 races a year. I do that so that I can smell the smells and hear the sounds and be reminded of all the things that a race car driver experiences, because when I go into the booth, I want that stuff fresh on my mind. So when I'm speaking about what I'm watching a driver do, I know what he's thinking, because I was just in a race car the other day, or that's, I just want to have those experiences right there to pull from. And I still get as nervous today getting behind the wheel of a race car to go out and start a race or run a lap as I did the very first time, way back in 1990, when I climbed in a race car. I was terrified. In 2000, I was qualifying for my first, in 1999, I was qualifying for my first cup race, and the crew members kneeled down beside the car. I'm literally next to go out, and I was begging him to switch places with me. I was so scared about what I was getting ready to do. Totally capable of doing it, totally confident that I was going to do it in a pretty decent fashion, but for whatever reason, the weight of the moment was just really, really hard for me to handle. And I went and ran a race at North Wilkesboro, which is a very old historic racetrack in North Carolina, just a few months ago, in a lower series that's sort of a very blue-collar type of racing series. And I had a blast, I really did. But I was as nervous to run that race, getting ready to climb into that car, as if I was getting ready to start the Daytona 500. And all of that is driven by the fear of failure. So when I get into, when I go to run a race on the weekend, I have an idea of what I think would be a good finish. And so if it's a top 10 or a top 5, that's what I expect to go accomplish. And when I don't, when I'm getting ready to get in the car, I'm fearful that I'm going to not realize what I feel like my potential is that day. Whether I feel like I should win the race or finish 10th, whatever that is, I'm very, very fearful that that's not going to be what happens. Something else is going to change, and I'm not going to get that result. Once I climb in the car and I buckle up and I fire the motor and I pull off pit road, all of that is gone. All of that worry and fear about performance and living up to an expectation or my own expectation is just disappears. It's the weirdest thing. And maybe pilots experience this behind, in a seat flying a plane. Once you're rolling down the runway and the plane starts to leave the ground, anything and everything that you're thinking about previous to that moment disappears. And for that moment that you're in flight till you land the plane and taxi to park the plane, you think about nothing but flying. And that's the way driving cars is. It demands your focus. It demands you to be watching and thinking and knowing what you're doing, because you're driving that car to the very limit of the tires and the limit of the grip. And so you have to be thinking about what you're doing, but it's kind of nice to not have to worry about failing or anything, for a few hours. Now, when the race is over, you're pulling down pit road and you're starting to realize the result of the day, there is some happiness or some sadness over that result. And, that's something that I always struggle to work through as well, getting over a bad result. I could not wait to get to the next race to redeem myself. I would be a miserable person to be around the whole week until I needed to, couldn't wait to get back in the car to show that, man, I can do this and try to get that good result that I wanted that was going to make me happy. That's kind of how I lived week to week. I'll be honest, I miss driving. I miss it terribly. The one thing that I do not miss is riding that roller coaster of being thrilled with the result and being so disappointed with the next one, and doing that every single week. We race, 40 races a year. And so all year long, you're just on this huge roller coaster. The highs are as high as they can be and the lows are so, so low. And there's no middle ground. You're either up on the top or you're at the bottom. And only really one person was at the top every week, and that was the guy that won the race. But that was a very tough sort of rubber band experience that you went through for 20 years. And so that's one thing that I don't miss about driving cars, but because you can't help but be competitive. Even when I get in the car to race once a year, I tell myself, man, I'm not going to get competitive. I'm not going to worry about the result. I'm not going to worry about the speed or the performance. But I mean, 2 laps in, I'm like, how good are we? I'm on the radio. We did good. We fast. We need to go fast. Already I'm starting to have those emotions of the up and down of, yeah, we're really good. We're going to have a good car. We should finish really well in this race. Or, the car's not fast. You're not fast. We got to figure something out. So it's that's kind of what the pressure is really. I don't know, pressure. I never dealt with pressure. I always dealt with my own expectations and the emotional roller coaster of that. I never, people would come up and say, hope you have a good race, hope you win. I always liked that. I always wanted to know that people were watching or paying attention or caring. That never really felt like pressure. But the emotions were tough.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, so, you had success, you had failure. Failures inevitable, and you were anxious to get out there again. But you just don't go back. You learn from the things that don't go well.
Yeah.
And I know that in aviation, when we have flights that don't go well, we debrief. Tell us how you approach that, whether it's in aviation or racing or anything else in life, about how you learn what you can do better and then apply that going forward so the result is different next time.
Yeah, in racing, we probably have really similar experiences. There's always there's a competition meeting every week. Monday, Tuesday, teams have it on different days, but all the drivers, all the crew chief, everybody gets in the same room and they review the last race. And it's an honest experience. If you did great, you're happy to be there. Boy, we're going to talk about my great day. But if you didn't have a good day, you had a mistake, you caused a crash, you're all going to talk about that too. And so it's kind of humbling. But yeah, you go over the very basic details of the race, and then you pair off into groups, and you and your crew chief, your engineers huddle in a smaller meeting, and you go over even finer details of your day. And there's a lot of watching tape, watching last year's race, and in-car cameras of other drivers. There's a lot of data, so there's things that didn't exist in the sport when I was driving that exists now. All of the drivers can see everything that the other drivers are doing with the gas, with the brake, with the steering wheel. It's called SMT data. And so I can go back, and if we all raced in the same race, I could go back and look at all of the things y'all were doing, and whoever was doing it really good, I could see exactly why you were making the car fast. That's something that didn't exist in my day, but today, drivers have that access to that data. And so all of that is being given to the drivers, and it's really up to you to apply yourself, right? And really dive into all of this information. And I was just speaking with a current driver yesterday, about how he's had to adapt to having so much in his hands. When he started in NASCAR, none of this was available. His job was basically to be there on time. That was it. And he'd climb in the car and drive the car, and that was his job. But today, he has to, he's responsible for studying or learning or pouring through information every single day of the week. And so he's had to really change his approach and be willing to do more and be a bigger part of the preparation side of it, and the Monday through Friday before you ever get to the racetrack. It's a big commitment, I think, compared to what I was used to when I was driving.
But it's important. Constant improvement is important. And I think, you talked about being able to see what the other drivers were doing, seeing what the data is. That's a big part of, safety. We're walking through What were they doing? What were they thinking? How do we emulate them or avoid getting into those same traps? So it's always about this pursuit of excellence. And you've certainly brought that both to aviation, I know, and to racing.
Yeah. We'll
Never satisfied.
No, I mean, I think that was something that I always said is what makes a great race car driver is one that's not happy. And so I would even say to people, you know, when you're watching a race on TV, even the guy out front has a problem with his car. He has something about that car he wants it to do better. And a really, really great race car driver is one that's never satisfied. I mean, you can have a lap lead on the field, and I want to hear you tell me something I can do to that car to make it faster. And so, you know, that's important. I think once we sort of get satisfied, get happy or complacent with where we are, what we're doing, that's when everybody behind you starts catching back up. At least in motorsports, you always have to be trying to, because motorsports, to be quite honest, is about creativity and innovation and even bending the rule book, breaking the rules. And so we're always, as drivers and owners, we're always trying to make NASCAR rewrite the rule book, right? Finding the holes and the misspeak and the mistakes in the rule book so that we can manipulate it and find a way to make our car faster. And then NASCAR looks at it and goes, that's illegal. And then we go, well, the way the rule book's written, it says it's legal. And so go write a new rule and then I'll change this part. And so that's every week we're doing that. And if I find a trick and I find a way to really read through that rule book and find something that I can do to my car, I got to really keep it a secret. And the whole garage is trying to figure out what made my car faster. And we're all on top of each other in the garage. And so it doesn't take long for everyone in the industry to realize what you did. And so those secrets are not secrets for long. Whatever you learned, legal or illegal, in the rule book, you're not going to have it for very long because the industry will figure it out. And so that's why you always got to be in pursuit of the next trick, the next innovation. And so, we always push our crew chiefs and our drivers to never be satisfied with the car. It's never perfect. We're always trying to find ways to make it faster, make it better, find more horsepower in the engine, whatever it can be.
Well, you have found a lot of speed in a lot of places. We're grateful for you to be here, share those lessons of success. You mentioned you're going to New York to talk about the book. You just wrote a children's book. You want to share a little bit about what you wrote and why you wrote it?
Thanks, I would love to do that. Yeah, I wrote a book about 4 years ago about about concussions and my experience with that, and had a great experience writing that book and being able to share with everyone some of the things that I learned about how to process that and some of the people that helped me get through that. Really successful, and it created a great relationship with me and the publisher. They were like, hey, you got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old daughter. I talk about that, being a father all the time. You want to write a children's book? I always found it funny, when you have kids, everybody brings you books. Like, that's the easiest thing to give somebody with a new child. Here's a book. And so we've got this mini library, hundreds of children's books, multiple copies of the same book, and the kids only read 2 or 3 of these books. And it's either Goodnight Moon or whatever it is, and that's the one they want every night. And I'm like, Isla, you've got 100 books, but Goodnight Moon every night. That's what we want. And so trying to figure out why kids latch on to a specific book. What is it about this book that's so interesting? And when I look at them, I found it pretty compelling how diverse and different the books were. And so my publisher came to me and said, you want to write a children's book? And I said, that'd be a hell of a challenge, probably the biggest challenge I've ever faced, because it's a big market and the kids really navigate to one specific thing. And so if somebody comes up to me, this is the payoff. If somebody comes up to me 20 years from now and says, man, I read this every night, my dad read this to me every night, that will be the win. If my book somehow connects to one child, that'll be an amazing thing, because children, they're a tough critic, and they know what they like, and so if I can find a way to connect with some kids through our book, it'll be great. It's called Buster's Trip to Victory Lane. Buster was my dad's nickname when he was about a 3 or 4 year old boy, And there's a lot of little Easter eggs in there that connect to me personally, and it was a lot of fun to write. We're already working on the second book about Buster, and yeah, going to New York tomorrow to promote it. But it really is a lot of work, a lot of effort goes into putting that together. But being a dad, it's an exciting challenge for me. The verdict's out on whether my girls like it or not. Still trying to figure that out, but gonna keep reading it to them. Hopefully it starts to resonate a little bit, but we're having fun with it.
Well, here's what I love. You wrote an email to your dad that clearly connected with him.
Yeah.
You've written a book and you hope it connects with your daughters.
Yeah.
So from Buster to Victory Lane, it sounds like you're on to something good. And we're grateful that you've spent the time with us today.
Thrilled to be here.
We just had Neil take us around the universe, and you're competing with Goodnight Moon, so we'll go to the moon and back to Victory Lane. Thank you for being with us,
Thank you, guys.
Neil.
Thank y'all.